Would the clerk please read her message?
Thank you. Welcome to the meeting. Thanks for joining us today. Just quick reminders. I'm sure you're all familiar with this by now, but just a request that you mute your device if you're not speaking so that we don't pick up background noise. And then for our committee members, if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question during the meeting, if you could please use the raise hand feature so that we can easily track your questions and comments. I'll go ahead and take roll. Director Baines.
Present.
Houlihan.
Here.
Clark-Kretz.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
Gore.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
New.
Here.
West. Absent. Vice Chair Kennedy.
Here.
And Chair Gallardo is absent.
Thank you very much. Is there any public communication of an item that is not on the agenda?
We have no public comment.
All right, and I skipped the Pledge of Allegiance, and that would be highly unpatriotic of me. So please stand and join me at the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, we have item number 1.
Thank you. Item number 1 is approving the minutes of the August 5th committee meeting, and staff recommends approval of the minutes as submitted.
Is there any questions or comments from the board on the minutes of August 5th? Is there any member of the public that is commenting on the minutes of August the 5th?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. So is there a motion?
Move to approve.
I did not see who that was. Oh, hang on. Thank you. Didn't see you because you were hidden. There we go. All right, we have a motion by Director Baines. Is there a second? Chair will second. Please call the roll.
Thank you. Director Baines.
Aye.
Houlihan.
Aye.
Clark-Kretz.
Aye.
Frost.
Aye.
Gore.
Aye.
Harris.
Yes.
New. Director New, if you could indicate your vote, please. Okay, I'll come back to him. West absent. Vice Chair Kennedy.
Aye.
Chair Gallardo is absent, and Director New, if you're there, can you indicate your vote? I see him raising thumbs up. I will put him down as a yes. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 2.
Item 2 is Green Means Go pilot program.
Good afternoon, Casey Lazan, SACOG staff. Today we have for you a briefing on the latest that we've learned of funding for our Green Means Go pilot program. As you heard earlier this month in an advocacy update to the board and also in June, the legislature passed AB 140, which for the first time awards funding for implementation of sustainable community strategies in a program that is now known as the Regional Early Action Planning Program of 2021, or as we are calling it, REAP 2.0. This program is the first of its kind. We don't have a lot of information about it, but we do know that once guidelines start to come out, we will have a pretty darn quick time frame for the development of a program and the implementation of the program. And if you'll recall, the board adopted a resolution in June in anticipation of this state action. So what we'd like to do today, because the Lunar Committee is likely to be the lead committee on the development and implementation of the Green Means Go program with this funding, is we've invited Jennifer Tendick from CalCog to come and talk with the committee about the intent of the program, the legislative intent of the program, and to help us with any questions that you may have thus far. So I will turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Casey.
Thanks. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you all today.
I'm Jennifer Tendick. I am the Director of Planning Policy at CalCog, the California Association of Councils of Governments. And as Casey mentioned, I'll talk a bit about legislative intent and then what we know about the timeline for REAP 2.0. Just for some quick background, Casey already covered it, but REAP 2 was established in Assembly Bill 140, a budget trailer bill just signed last month by the governor, and it does include $600 million in the state budget for this program. The bill actually has a number of housing programs in it, but the one we're talking about today is the Regional Early Action Planning Grants Program of 2021, more affectionately called REAP 2.0, because as you know, there was a budget trailer bill in 2019 that established the first REAP program. That was established as a one-time housing program focused exclusively on housing planning. So although the names are the same, REAP 2 is not simply an extension of REAP 1. I think it's safe to say REAP 1 played a part in the rollout of REAP 2, but many components are different. And they are two different programs, so it's important that they don't get conflated. I'm not going to talk about everything that's different, but I will talk about legislative intent because that is one of them. REAP 2.0 is very much about supporting regional implementation of your SCS, your Sustainable Community Strategy. Elaborating that on a bit, there's been a few factors at play that really have contributed to this and this program and this funding. I think going back to 2008, when SB 375 first established that MPOs like SACOG have to develop an SCS, MPOs have since then been voicing the need for implementation funding. But I think more significant than that and more recently than that, the state has really begun to recognize the importance of regions and regional differences and that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. There are many state grant programs that support SCS implementation and are trying to do that, and they are very helpful, but it's even a challenge within those programs to address all the needs because there isn't that one-size-fits-all solution. We have regional variation across the state. And I would attribute a lot of that understanding and of that need in large part with your efforts on Green Means Go. There are definitely elements in REAP 2.0 in that section of AB 140 that were very clearly influenced by all of your work on Green Means Go. So SACOG has played a key role here. So as far as intent goes, REAP 2, again, about SCS implementation, but specifically within your SCS, it's focused on the SCS goals around infill housing, VMT reduction, and climate. The last thing I'll say sort of with along the lines of intent is this is obviously a very big opportunity for MPOs. There's some small element of this that maybe is the state saying, okay, we hear you. Now let's see what you can do. Here's the funding. So as I mentioned, this is much bigger than REAP 1 in many ways, but I think the opportunity here is also much greater as well. So I'll talk about timing real quick, and then we can kind of get into any questions. As Casey said, the timing is tight. The statute currently says that funds must be expended by June of 2024. That's less than 30 months when the funds would become available. So at CalCog, we know that's a big issue for all of you. We're working to help fix it. I would say it's very much a work in progress. We are trying to get a legislative fix through a cleanup bill. And I would say things are sounding positive. We know the funding for REAP 2 is coming from the American Rescue Plan funds, the state and local coronavirus relief funds. And we know those funds don't have to be fully expended until December of 2026. So we're really hopeful that we will get some flexibility in the June 2024 expenditure deadline that the statute has currently. But even still, if we get that extended 1 year or even 2, it still remains a tight timeline. In terms of the program rollout, MPOs are eligible for the first 10% of funds in January. My interpretation here is that that's your get ready money. It's for like some staffing needs and outreach and getting your plan together for the full funds. However, that it is possible that the state would allow some of that early money for funding projects. So that will just be up to the state discretion, and we really won't know until we see that notice of funding availability come out, which we anticipate in December. But there are 4 state agencies partnering to administer REAP 2.0. So all of this will be at their discretion. The primary agency is HCD, the Housing and Community Development Department, and they're collaborating with the California Air Resources Board, the Strategic Growth Council, and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. So together, all 4 agencies will be developing the application materials and approving applications. And right now, it's my understanding that those 4 agencies are just beginning to meet, given that the bill was just signed last month. HCD is really focused on staffing up for this program, and the 4 agencies are just really working out the mechanics of working together on it. So it's too early to give you any better sense of the schedule than what we have here. But we do know, because it says in the statute, that the first 10% will be available to you by January. We also know that the 4 state agencies do want to collaborate with CalCog and the NPOs. So I suspect that we'll start hearing from them within the next month or 2. They're just right now needing this time to really come together and get going. So I think we'll hear from them if possible, see a draft NOFA before it's officially released, and really hopefully be working with them a lot along the way and have more information and knowledge in the coming weeks. So that's all I have about it. I'm happy to stick around and help answer any questions with Casey as well.
Okay, Casey, do you have anything to add before we go to questions?
I just want to add to ensure that that we've connected to the dots sufficiently. This REAP 2.0 funding, this is money that that your board, that the Sacramento region has been advocating for about the last 3 years for Green Means Go. So when we see this funding, it's about $34 million. That's $34 million that's going to be shaped into the Green Means Go program. And again, your board adopted the resolution that's attached to this item that it says that that's what we intend to do with it. So yes, and we're happy to take any questions.
Great. Are there any questions of the board? All right. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
No public comment. All right. This is an information item. I thank you very much, both of you, and both for Jennifer and Casey for your presentation. And we'll go to the next item.
Item number 3 is status update on implementation of Senate Bill 743.
Marcella?
Hello all, sorry, bear with me a second while I share my screen. All right, can you all see that?
Yes.
Great. So good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Madi Salazar and I'm with your SACOG staff. So today I'll be giving an update on Senate Bill 743 implementation. I'm going to go over what it is and what we've been doing to support your agency staff. And then finally, I'll share what we've been hearing as areas of interest as we continue to implement SB 743. So first, what it is. The Senate Bill 743 changed how we measure transportation impacts of land use and transportation projects in our environmental review process, also known as CEQA. The environmental review, the intention of the law is to reduce barriers to infill development, to promote smart growth, and then to increase active modes of transportation. And so the legislation was actually passed back in 2013. And after a very lengthy outreach process, the Office of Planning and Research, or OPR, recommended vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, as the main metric for measuring transportation impacts in CEQA. And so, as I'm sure you've noticed in many of our presentations, VMT is a metric we use often, and we used it before it was a part of SB 743. So we use it as a measure that correlates with greenhouse gas calculations, with air quality, and then with regional travel patterns. We also use it to identify maintenance needs and to better understand the safety of our roads. It's also a helpful indication of access to economic and social opportunity. So in low VMT areas, we see that residents have access to other modes of transportation that generally provides better access to daily destinations such as jobs and services. And so in the CEQA context, VMT is a metric used to measure how much auto travel is created by a proposed project. And so this helps us determine the project's impacts on our roadways and will invite us to think more constructively about our growth patterns and how we create more connections to everyday travel needs. So with the previous metric, level of service, or LOS, transportation impact was measured by its effect on congestion. So if there was more congestion created by a project, the common solutions were mitigation measures like increased road capacity, which would result in a higher VMT per capita, and therefore higher greenhouse gases, more distance between jobs and housing, and then ultimately where we are now, which is longer distances to travel, which means a huge reliance on vehicles to get to where you need to go. And so this makes transit more difficult to implement. Walking and biking is more dangerous. It also promotes inequity in our communities by limiting ease of access to services, to shopping, housing, schools, jobs, and recreation. And all of these are activities that we need in our region to promote a higher quality of life for our residents. And so this new metric, VMT, is certainly not a silver bullet. LOS is still a metric that agencies like yourselves are using and have built into impact fee programs and general plans. So we don't anticipate LOS to simply disappear. However, the hope is that by using VMT as the metric in CEQA, in our environmental review process, that we are better equipped to aim our project development in alignment with our other goals for improving air quality, reducing greenhouse gases, and promoting sustainable patterns of growth. And so the next portions of my presentation are about what we're doing to support your local agency staff and what we're focusing on. But before I get to that, are there any questions about the legislation itself?
Any questions? Continue.
Okay, great. Okay, so what we're doing about it. So soon after the legislation was passed, SACOG convened a group of local agencies to provide a forum for learning, for resource sharing, and for collaboration. And so in partnership with this local agency working group, SACOG applied for and was awarded a Caltrans planning grant for developing implementation tools and approaches for VMT analysis. And so that project was completed last year in June of 2020. And our final report seen here on this slide is also available on our website. And so we also provide implementation support by leveraging SACOG's data and analysis team to create low VMT screening maps, and also by having transit priority area maps available. So per the state's technical guidance, if projects are already in a low VMT area, which the Office of Planning and Research, or OPR, describes as 15% below regional or local average VMT, and if projects are consistent with the land uses in that low VMT area, then they do not need to do further VMT analysis. And then same goes for projects that are in transit priority areas, because as we have seen, projects like housing near transit create more opportunities for residents to use alternative modes of transportation. And so we take these resources to our local agency working group for discussion and feedback, and then we share them on our website. And the local agency working group meets regularly to discuss the individual agency approaches to SB 743 and to talk about timely topics. And so recently the discussions have been around mitigation. So under CEQA, if a project has an impact, the lead agency is required to look for mitigation opportunities. And so now for transportation with VMT as the metric, lead agencies need to identify more ways to reduce VMT. And so this brings me to the final portion of my presentation. So what are we focusing on now? So given that many projects in the past had the green light to increase travel, this new metric is a little bit of the opposite. So where in the past we emphasized vehicle throughput, how many vehicles can be moved through an area or an intersection, we now emphasize a reduced reliance on vehicles. So that just means what other options are there for folks to move around. And so this is a big shift, and we're trying to figure out how to reduce vehicle miles traveled and promote the land uses that support increased accessibility to daily needs. And what we've heard from local agencies with projects in high VMT areas that have limited VMT reducing opportunity in their project area is that it is challenging to build in ways to reduce VMT. And so one potential option is to create a VMT mitigation program, where one example of this is that projects pay a fee into a program that then funds VMT reduction elsewhere. And then another example of a type of program could be like an exchange model, where the developer or project sponsor is given a menu of items with their corresponding VMT reduction potential, and then they implement those to reduce their VMT impact. And so in every conversation I have about SB 743, this is the hot topic. And so we're trying to figure out how we can turn this challenge of mitigation into an opportunity for coordinated and efficient VMT reduction. And so earlier this year, again in partnership with the local agency working group, we submitted a Caltrans planning grant application to further study and evaluate the feasibility of VMT mitigation programs for our region, but unfortunately we were not awarded. And so we're still trying to further our understanding of this topic for ourselves and for local agencies by bringing in other folks interested in this topic to share experiences with us. And other efforts we have going on is we're participating in a Caltrans OPR statewide working group on SB 743 implementation. We're participating on a technical advisory group for a UC Berkeley feasibility study on VMT mitigation programs. And that's the two documents you see here on this slide. They're looking to update these documents, and these were kind of the foundational understanding of what VMT mitigation programs could look like. So they're taking that a step further to help us understand what they could actually look like if they're implemented. And then also we're having discussions with other MPOs to talk about how we can approach VMT analysis and mitigation issues together. So I know this is a lot of information, so there are two takeaways I want to leave you with. My first takeaway is that there is no one size fits all for how SB 743 is implemented. Lead agencies like yourselves have the discretion for how you integrate VMT into your environmental review process. And this could look like anywhere from choosing to use the state's guidance or to developing your own policy integrated into your general plan. And then my second takeaway is that because this is still new, there are more questions right now than answers. So we're still figuring this out, but given that we are still a great resource for you and your local agency staff as you navigate this, and we're more than happy to help share additional resources or any other information we can provide. And also, if you want to ask of your agency staff to join our local agency working group, they're more than welcome. And so with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open it up to any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Maricela. Are there any questions from the board? Well, see, Maricela, there actually aren't more questions than answers. Is there any members of the public like to comment or questions?
No public comment.
All right, thank you. That too is an information item. I appreciate it. Good staff work. Item number 4, please.
Item 4 is gearing up for the 2024 update of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, Sustainable Community Strategy.
Staff here to make a presentation. I'm looking.
Hi, good
There you go.
afternoon. Hi, my name is Binu Abraham, and I am the project manager for the 2024 MTP ACS. Give me a second while I share my screen.
While you're sharing your screen, I'm going to just let the committee know that I will probably not make it through this, and I'm not literally, but I might have to leave, and we'll be asking for Director Harris to take over for the duration of the meeting.
Okay, can you see my screen?
No.
How about now?
Yes.
Thank you. So this is an informational item. SACOG is beginning to plan on scoping work on the 2024 update of the MTP SES, or Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategies. I would like to provide a high-level overview of the MTP SES update process, and we will be bringing back the major elements of the project in the following months with more of a concrete timeline and schedule. So let's start with what is MTP SES. Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy, also known as MTP SES, or simply the plan. It's a long-range plan that combines land use strategies with transportation investments to meet the varying travel needs of residents in the SACOG region. It's a plan that creates an integrated, multimodal transportation system paired with an efficient land use pattern that connects housing to jobs, education, goods and services, and recreational opportunities. We update this plan every 4 years. Why do we need a plan? We need the plan for a variety of reasons. Some of them are just requirements. As an MPO, we have to meet certain federal and state requirements, and having a plan helps us to meet all of that requirements. This plan is also a shared regional vision of our future. More importantly, this is an opportunity for us to identify regional priorities and increase our competitiveness for grant opportunities. Now, these are some of the more obvious reasons why we need a plan. But beyond these, there are a few unique reasons specific to our region on why we need a comprehensive plan. One of that is our region is diverse, both in terms of our communities and our residents. We need a plan that will address the diverse transportation and mobility needs of our region. If we look at the land use pattern and housing in our region, about 80% of our region's land use is classified as rural, and 20% is urban or suburban. But in terms of housing, 90% of the housing in our region is located in the urban areas, and with less than 10% in rural areas. In terms of our residents, Sacramento region is very diverse in its demographics. In 2000, 64% of our residents in the region were non-Hispanic white. But by 2019, this has shrunk to 51%. The Hispanic and Asian populations have continued to grow steadily. Why else do we need a plan? Because our region is growing. The population growth in our region has gone from 1.9 million in 2000 to over 2.5 million in 2020. If we compare the annual population growth of Sacramento region to other parts of California, we can see the trending with the pink line shows the Sacramento annual population growth. And you can see that it is trending
more than any of the other Bay Area or Los Angeles or San Diego region. Our region's steady population growth over the last 5 years has placed our region as the fastest growing in the state. The transportation challenges we face in our region requires a comprehensive planning effort. The graph shows the per capita daily vehicle miles traveled for the 4 large metropolitan areas. The pink line denotes the SACOG region. Of the large metropolitan areas, Sacramento and San Diego have the higher VMT per capita compared to Los Angeles and San Francisco Bay Area. While a difference in a few VMT may not seem much, it quickly adds up on a daily per capita basis and in relation to climate goals. What about our local streets and our road condition? Our overall road pavement condition seems to be deteriorating, and we need a strategy to stretch our limited dollars to expand and maintain the transportation system. The dotted black line shows the overall Sacramento region, and you can see that the pavement condition has been deteriorating since 2008. This leads us to the question that we need a plan that will address our revenue, pricing, and investments. As the gas tax revenues has been on the decline ever since our gas vehicles got more efficient. We either went to hybrid or electric vehicles, so the gas tax revenues has come down. At the same time, the cost to build new roads and maintain current roads have increased, which both combined goes to the condition that our road condition, it gets increasingly more expensive to repair over time. And this has caused a worsened condition of our road payments. So what does the plan do? The plan lays out a path for having more homes near major job centers, provide more options to get around, and provide more accessibility in general. It also lays out a plan for improving our air quality, preserving open space and natural resources, bolstering our agricultural economy, and helping California achieve its goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. What else? It provides more transit and other modes of travel to the residents. It gives us a path to having less congestion and delay and optimizing our travel time by better connecting communities. Now that we have gone over why we need a plan and what does the plan do, let's take a look at how is the plan organized. There are 5 major components of the MTP. Starting with the growth projections, which is a long-range economic forecast, to land use and transportation, where we collaborate and coordinate with the local jurisdiction staff members to come up with the land use allocation and get a transportation project list. We forecast our revenue, and then we overlay the transportation and land use patterns together to come up with the most efficient way of our transportation investments. After that comes our performance outcome, which is the hard, complex part of data analytics. This is to make sure that we do attain our policy goals. Finally, the board adopts the policies and strategies. So what's ahead for this plan? Every plan focuses on a few policy priorities around which we measure all our goals and outcomes. Along with advancing the policy objectives of the previous plan, the staff tries to identify new focus areas where we see a need to expand in response to changing needs and challenges. Here are a few example focus areas we will be bringing to the board for consideration and discussion. This is by no means an extensive list. This is just a few examples of topics that we would consider bringing to the board. And some of them are equity, project prioritization, climate resilience, safety, economy, etc. So that brings me to the timeline of the plan. So the staff is working on developing a work plan and a detailed schedule of the plan in the coming months. But at a very high level, these outline the major steps in the plan development. The icon of the gavel means that those are places where we will be coming for board action. But this no way means that this is the only time you will be hearing from us. I promise you that over the next 2.5 years, you will be seeing so much of me that you will be tired of me. With that, before I move on to the next portion of this presentation, I would like to pause and see if there is any questions.
Any questions at this point from the committee? Please continue. Oh, Sue Frost.
I just wanted to ask, I know it's been really hard. In the past, we have not achieved our MTP SCS goals. And I wonder if there are there penalties if we don't achieve them? Are they keeping track of that? How should we feel about that?
I can try and answer it, and I would suggest maybe Casey or James can chime in as needed. So if you are talking about the implementation of the plan, we do try to do the implementation as soon as we adopt a plan. So our focus is always to try and implement whatever goals and priorities we have outlined in our plan. If we feel that something needs tweaking, that gets updated or considered in our next plan. So anything we feel like we are falling short will be updated in our next plan so that we can address that directly. I hope that answers. Are you talking about the?
That's okay. Keep going. It's fine.
Dr. Frost, are you referring to the greenhouse gas target?
Yeah. I don't know how, I think it's going to be hard for us to achieve what they want. Well, we know that it was hard just to get it on paper. So achieving it will be much harder. And I wonder what happens if we don't, is there a deadline or a catch up time, or do we just keep going and doing the best we can? Is that kind of the idea that you have with the conversations you have with the state?
It's a good question. So I will, and it's dynamic because we're moving towards, I think the next target year is 2035. And so in the current plan, we're supposed to reach a 19% reduction by 2035. And when the state has actually got its own monitoring report that all regions have to contribute to, so that the state can look at how are we making progress towards that. They're updating that report this year. It's called the SB 150 report, and we'll be hearing about that in the coming months. So everything that we do in SACOG's program, the things that we bring to you on a monthly basis are to implement and try to implement the plan and try to achieve that goal. But the challenge is also that as we're trying to do that, the state is also reevaluating its own greenhouse gas plans.
Oh.
And maybe there's no commitment from them, but maybe adjusting targets moving forward. And so in some ways it's hard to answer your question because it is literally a moving target.
It's moving on all levels. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Director Kennedy, I wonder if I could weigh in here for just a minute.
Absolutely.
So I think I agree with everything Casey just said. The statute itself does not provide for any feedback loops or any consequences for not meeting the target. The obligation under the statute is to adopt a plan that meets the target and sets out a process for adopting an alternative plan in the event that an MPO can't adopt a plan that meets the target. Having said that, there is a lot of discussion among state agencies and among legislators about a slow implementation of the various regional plans. And there have been at least 3 bills introduced this session that address that very point, that in some cases there's slow implementation, in some cases there's no implementation of the plan going on or a failure of implementation. And so in addition to the 150 report, there's a lot of talk about additional work that ought to be done to create consequences for not actually implementing the plans that are being adopted. I think the other thing that's being talked about at state agencies is there a way to incentivize or potentially penalize regions that are not implementing their plans quickly enough or strongly enough? And so while there's not a specific legislative response at the moment, I think it's something for SACOG to continue to be mindful about because it's being talked about at a state level and at a legislative level. I think the final thing that I would say about this is there is still a gap. The Air Board adopted very aggressive standards, greenhouse gas standards at 19% for the major MPOs and 18% for SACOG. But there is still a large gap between what the plans should be accomplishing in order to be consistent with the state's climate plan for 2030 and 2050. Arguably, the regional plans ought to be achieving 25% savings in greenhouse gas emissions, a target that everyone agrees is simply not achievable by the regional agencies. But the point is that is going to continue to create great regulatory pressure for the state and the regions to work together to find that 6% of missing savings somewhere in the system. And so there's going to continue to be a lot of regulatory and legislative attention on these issues to try and push for greater savings somewhere in the system. I hope that helps give a little more background about all the things that are going on in the background in this field.
Sorry.
Director Frost, you're muted. Director Frost, okay.
Sorry. Yeah, that was very helpful, all of you. It gives me an idea that this is something way bigger than us and a moving target. And they have to be thinking about it because we're probably not the only ones that aren't meeting our target. So I appreciate your input.
Thank you, Director Frost. Are there any other questions? Okay, Binu, go ahead and continue, but at this point, just for continuity's sake, I'm gonna pass the gavel over to Director Harris.
All right, I've got it right here.
Thank you, sir. And y'all have a good day. I apologize.
All right. It looks like we're on item number 5.
All right, thank you. So the next part of the portion of the presentation is about project evaluation process. As I mentioned, that there are 5 major components of the MTP. The project evaluation process falls on the 4th level, which is in the data and analytics part. This is done because data and analytics, as you probably know, is one of the most time-consuming and complicated portion of the whole MTP SES process. So we are doing a head start on the whole process. My colleague, Darren Conley, who is the project manager for this new methodology that we are trying to develop, is going to be talking about that session. So I will pause my sharing and ask him to start his.
Thanks a lot, Banu. If you sit tight, I will get my screen share going here. That. Share, and then I click that thing. How's it looking, Banu?
Looking good.
Excellent. All right, thank you. My name is Darren Conley. I work on SACOG's data and analysis team, and I'll be just giving an intro to our project evaluation process effort that's just starting really in its nascent stages. To give some context to it, so as Banu just went over, we're starting our MTP SCS update. And among the components of that update are 1, there's a set of policy goals that every update will entail. Past examples of policy goals have included things like, reduce fatalities or promote economic prosperity. Just as examples, they'll vary from MTP to MTP. And the second component is a list of transportation projects that are supposed to support or advance those policy goals. Nice little image there for that. But what's missing is a method by which we can look at each project and evaluate the extent to which it supports each policy goal. And that missing connection between individual projects and policies is where PEP comes in. And so what PEP will do is two main parts. It'll support development of the list of projects that ends up in the MTP SCS. And then for projects that are in that MTP SCS project list, it'll measure how well each project advances MTP policy goals. To give an example, if one of the policy goals in the next MTP SCS were to be reducing fatalities and injuries on the road network, PEP's role would be to evaluate the extent to which each project has the potential to reduce injuries and fatalities. And I kind of flag which project can do the most to move the needle on that policy goal. And that's just one example policy goal. And there are a number of benefits between making this connection between projects and policies. One is it just gives us really important insight on which MTP SCS projects are the ones that have the most promise to really move the needle on policy goals. And two, on a sort of a financial side, it'll help us identify and strategically put forth projects that show the most promise in competitive funding programs to bring new transportation dollars into the region. Just to give one example is the federal RAISE grant program, which currently makes about $1 billion available to award competitively to transportation projects based on those projects' ability to advance goals like advancing socioeconomic equity or promoting environmental sustainability. And PEP, the project evaluation process, can connect to that by helping SACOG quickly and efficiently flag or identify which projects are happening in the MTP that could be the most competitive for those RAISE funds. And again, just RAISE is one example. There are other future programs, but it's the idea is that PEP helps us flag which projects are the most competitive for sort of policy-driven grant programs. So hearing words like evaluation and project, some of you may be wondering, well, what happens to my projects? A key thing to distinguish about PEP, the project evaluation process, is that it informs but does not determine project prioritization. So like using that safety example I gave earlier, the injury and fatality example, PEP will help inform a conversation about which project is a priority by saying, these are the projects that can do the most to improve safety in the region. However, what it does not do is PEP does not determine if safety is more important as a policy goal than, for example, greenhouse gas reduction, or if it's even a policy goal to begin with. Those decisions are about which policies drive PEP's scores and which policy goal, the relative weight of each policy goal in driving PEP scores. Those are absolutely very board-driven decisions that you all will definitely be a part of. Lastly, just kind of how PEP, the evaluation process, will fit into the plan, the MTP SCS. Like I said earlier, the first component comes sooner in the plan, in the first part of the plan, where it'll sort of help inform and support development of the MTP project list. And then it makes another appearance later in the plan where once the full MTP project list has been adopted, it'll analyze key projects in the MTP project list and give them project level performance data that will help with decisions related to project prioritization, as well as strategically pursuing funding through for those projects through competitive grant programs. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
No questions, looks like. All right, thank you very much for that. And we're going on to our final item, receive and file. Anything to add on that by chance, Casey? Nothing? All right. Any other matters? Anybody want to bring up? This is a really tough to close this meeting, so. All right. All right, with that being said, we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you all very much. It's always good to see the faces, even if it is virtual. All right, have a good night.
Thank you.
everybody.
Nice to see everyone.